My new book, Peace Over Pain, is now available. You can buy it for $20 on Amazon, or you can download it for free inside my exclusive Facebook group. Simply go to peaceoverpain.com/join the group. And between the group and the book, you will learn how to eliminate chronic conditions.
Welcome to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese, a program that can help you become liberated in the modern world. Now, here's your host, Dr. Kevin W. Reese.
Have you found your hidden treasure? Welcome to episode number 151. Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Antoinette Allen. She's a coach, a public speaker, and the author of Bras, Bootstraps, and Bible. So sit down and relax and take in this beautiful recording. Let's begin. Dr. Allen, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So what's the hidden treasure in every human being?
Oh, goodness. My personal belief is that inside of every one of us is some treasure, right? So every one of us is unique within our own rights. You know, right now, I often share with people, I said, there's no one else in the world that has your fingerprint. No one. And so a piece of that treasure it's going to be discovered as we get to know people, as we make connections to determine it. You know, your treasure could be that you're a person of great empathy, or you're a great listener. For me, a lot of people say, you're so warm. It's nothing I create. It's a piece that's hidden in my treasure box. And so that's what I like to think about, that everyone has some hidden treasure. And for some people, it's buried deep. And for other people, you know, it's easily seen. And so that's the journey of life is going around and being able to add to someone's treasure box and to take out of others.
Do you feel that there's a God component to that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that it is God who has planted that treasure in each of us. Depending on where people's faith base relies, my faith is the Christian faith. And so I fully believe that the Creator himself, that we each have a piece of him within us. And that's where the hidden treasure sparks from. And that's my belief. And I've seen it time and time again.
Yeah. Do you have any stories that correlate with that you've seen?
Many, many stories. So, you know, if I just think back to, you know, some of my journey. So I've spent 21 years in the military and seen a lot of places and met a lot of people. But the one thing that I know is that God was in all of those places. So whether it was a highlight in my life, you know, or if it was a time of despair, there was always someone, you know, put squarely into my path to encourage me. And so many of those people have been in my families, but many of them have been strangers. I mean, just a person who in a training hands you a sticky before you leave and say, wow, you know, this meant so much to me. So thousands of stories, you know, around those types of things happening.
Yeah, isn't it funny how someone comes into your life, even if it's just for 10 minutes, you know, and then it just makes a shift, right?
It does. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's funny. I just get a kick out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so I do a lot of training and educating and public speaking. And it's so interesting, the stories that people will hang back, you know, and share with you about just something you said, something small that you don't even know. And they'll go, you know, when you said that, I thought about my dad, right? And what he told me when I was coming up, or when you said that, it reminded me that maybe I should go and share this, with my daughter or with my sons. So we never know what people need, and we never know how important just saying a hello to someone. We don't know how that changes them.
Yeah. And you don't know what they're going through.
We don't. And even more so today, we really don't know what people are going through because, on the outside, they may be smiling and saying, oh, no, everything's great. But below that surface, we just never know what people are experiencing.
No.
Mhm.
So you were in the Air Force for 21 years. That's a nice chunk of change right there. That's a long time. It's 2 decades and a year on top.
just a little extra, right?
What what kind of challenges did you face in there doing your service?
Many challenges. I mean, when you spend that much time in an organization, you grow up, right? So you evolve. And I went in at the age of 19, right? And so some of my challenges were due to people just putting limits on me. Sometimes that limit was you're too young to do this, right? So I can remember one of those first challenges was the fact that I wanted to start college. So here I am, I'm like 19, 20, and all my friends were really out kind of partying and, being young. And I just thought, I was like, that seems like to be a waste of time. Like, you're going to do this every night, just, have fun every night. And I started thinking, I said, well, I think I want to finish my degree.
Hmm.
And I can remember, older people that I was, serving with, they were just saying, no, you're too young to be going to school right now. You should be focusing on your job. And I was like, well, my boss said I could do this. And I faced a lot of resistance because the bulk of my college classes, my night college classes, were people who were about to retire.
Hmm.
And so, because they were like, well, I'm about to start a second career. This is the time to do this. And here I am in here. And it was a lot of, friction. And I was like, well, this is what I'm going to do. So I did 4 years of active duty, in the Air Force. I graduated with my bachelor's degree the month that I left active duty. And then I entered into the National Guard and spent the next 17 years, doing that.
Hmm.
So that was one of the earlier challenges. There were challenges around my race, if I'm being honest, of,
Mhm.
people saying, you can't do this. You don't see anyone who looks like you who've done that. You're a woman and you're an African-American woman. And I'm like, well, somebody's got to be the first.
Right.
Somebody's got to be the first.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you went all the way and got a doctorate. So
I did. I did. And I have to tell you, that doctorate really was in honor of my grandparents, in particular, my grandfather. Neither one of my grandparents graduated from high school, because in Virginia back then, education, it was not, equitable. And so I just remember hearing my grandfather's voice in the back of my head when I was a little girl and would complain about school. He would say, baby, you got to get your lesson. You got to get your lesson. Education is so important. And so, I went all the way up, got the master's, and I was like, I think I'm going to get a doctorate. And people were like, why? I was like, I don't know. I just hear my granddaddy's voice, right? Saying, you got to get your lesson. And so it has opened up quite a few doors for me, but I did that in honor of them. So
nice. Nice. Is there any stories in the National Guard that really kind of stand out?
the mission of the National Guard has changed. So it's not just, state support anymore. We support in the war, we support, other localities, other communities. And so when Hurricane Katrina,
Mm.
happened, I got activated for Hurricane Katrina, but
Mm.
I was activated and went to my National Guard unit. I was a logistics officer at the time, so I went up there to help out with that response, while other people from my unit actually went, down and fully supported Hurricane Katrina. And I remember having those conversations with people. They're like, what is what's happening, in the Gulf Coast have to do with you? You're in Virginia. And I'm like, it's the National Guard. We support more than just local storms. We are completely integrated into the mission of the Air Force, and
What
we help out so much.
what did you experience with Hurricane Katrina?
So I did not go, down to Louisiana. So I was not boots on the ground. I stayed back in DC and just provided, support, from DC. So ensuring that the people that we deployed, had what they needed. So as they were calling back, we could resource and take care of the home support. And then we were there because if they needed more bodies, we were ready and, and fully ready to go. But I'll tell you, I did see quite a bit of people who were, just ready. My bags are packed. I'm here. What can I do? How can I support? And so that's the beauty of the National Guard, I will say, is that there are people, because they're doing this, they're doing this out of patriotism. They're doing this because they love their communities and they want to support. It really was a situation of people who were just dedicated and ready to go. And so I've not seen that, in a lot of work environments, but I will say that that unit, I mean, really every unit I've been in several, was just filled with some of the best people that you ever want to meet.
It feels like so long ago. 2005, right?
Yeah, well, so I retired. Yeah, it was 2005. I retired in 2014. And I'm telling you, it feels like a lifetime ago.
So I have to ask you this. Hurricane Katrina is notorious for um, the telethon that they did on television to raise money. And Kanye West made that very polarizing statement on national television. I'm curious what you thought about that. He said George Bush doesn't care about Black people.
Yeah.
Okay, you got one foot in, one foot. You're in the military and you're African American. How do you take that comment?
So I have to tell you, one person cannot speak for millions of people,
Right.
right? I mean, so that's just the truth. Like I said, I spent a lot of time educating, talking about, diversity and equity issues. My doctoral work was around senior Black women leaders, but I am not the voice of every African American woman, right? I'm not the voice of the Black community, and neither is Kanye West. I mean, so when one individual person speaks, I mean, he was addressing, that's almost a one-on-one conversation because he doesn't have statistics.
He was giving his personal opinion.
It was his personal opinion, and he's absolutely, he has that right to be able to do that just as well as other people have the right to say, well, I don't agree with you concerning that. And then some people said, oh, I do agree with you. But it's all based upon our perspective and our experiences. I mean, now, the president is the commander in chief, right, of all military troops. I mean, that's their role. And so it's a little funny in our family. My mother would call me up. I'm not a political person per se. Whoever is the sitting president is the commander in chief. So she would call me and she would say, did you hear what your president did today? It doesn't matter which president it is. But this is how, I mean, throughout my entire, entire military career, even now, she'll call and say, did you hear what your president said? Because it was well known for me. I would tell people, that's my commander in chief, period. Right? I'm wearing this uniform.
Well, you must have heard a lot from her from 2016 to 2020.
Oh, goodness. Once again, it's all a part of the journey. I mean, it really is. I mean, I fully believe that, everyone has the individual right to be a free thinker, to be, a critical thinker, and to have their opinions. But I have the right also to hold my opinions.
How does someone keep moving forward when they're going through a really tough situation?
Oh man. So um, well, there are many ways that you keep moving forward. And I created a model concerning that. It's called the fist model. So think of a fist, like a raised
Yeah.
fist.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's a 4-step model to help people to open back up. And so, I help people to explore this. So the first step is called find the melody. And so this is about the music, right? What is the current music that is playing in your life? If you're trying to get back up from a difficult situation, what's the music? I mean, is it the Jaws theme song, right?
Yeah.
You feel like everything is out to get you, or is it Pharrell, Happy, right? I mean, wherever the music finds you, it's just important for you to understand what you're, exploring, what you're feeling, what are the sounds. So that's one way, because music moves us. We know that music shifts the emotions. And
Mm.
so my first, really go to for people is to explore, find the melody. So find yourself a song that's going to help you get back up. A lot of people will tell me, oh, it's fight song. Do you remember, that song? This is my fight song, right?
Hmm.
Or maybe it's Rocky, Rocky Balboa. But
Absolutely.
find that music. The second thing is to identify the movement, right? So what are you doing? Are you running, crawling, dancing? What are you doing? Explore that for yourself to know where you are in the moment. That will help you to develop a plan. If you know that you're walking and you want to be running, well, then that takes practice, right? You've got to get out there and just do it. The third step is to savor the moment. And so savoring the moment is that critical step. And for me, in the hardest times of life, it really was about waking up in the morning and saying to myself, girl, you're alive.
Mm.
What are you going to do with this day? Because you
Yeah.
keep waking up, right? And so that's another thing that people can do. And then that
Mm.
last step is to transport the memory. And so that's once you're to the place of savoring the moment and saying, hey, I'm alive and I've got to move past this. That last step is to really think about, what are you going to do with that memory? What are you going to learn from it? Right? Is it going to be the thing that you forever look back at and judge the rest of the world by? Or is it the thing that you're just going to say, yes, this happened. This was a very tough time in my life. And maybe you share it to help others.
Mm.
And so those are a few things, that I offer to people about how to move forward. But a really good resilience tip is to know, if you think back on the things that you've already survived, that will help you in your current, crisis moment. You can say, well, when I was 18, I thought the world was falling apart because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And now I'm 35, right? And I'm in a better spot. When you think back on that and remember that you got through that difficult moment, you'll know that you can get through this current difficult
Mm.
moment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, using memory uh, a reference point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And what made you write this book about what's it? It's bras, bootstraps
Bras, bootstraps,
in the
and the
Bible.
Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things was, it just seems like I have experienced so many interesting things in life. And so, I'm starting to get older. I mean, not too old, but I'm getting older. And I was like, my kids don't know any of those stories, right? And so I thought, what a nice way to sort of, memorialize, a lot of the military moments and the things that I've experienced, in a book. And so that bras, bootstraps, and the Bible, that's essentially helping people to think about their support systems.
Mm.
So bras is really about the people who support you, right? It could be your friends, your family, your work, coworkers, but the people who support you. Bootstraps is how you support yourself, like your internal, resilience of, that misnomer of, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That doesn't work. But we do have things that we can pull on in the midst of difficult times that'll help us get through it. And then the Bible clearly is really talking about your spiritual resilience, your capacity to pull on something that's outside of yourself, right? A higher power. And so, I wrote it in that way to share stories, but also to help people to really think about their own resilience. So it's a part, part self-help book and part storytelling, which is what I love to do. So,
Right. Right.
and one day my kids might read it.
How old are they now?
So I have two elementary school age kids, and I actually have a 21-year-old. So
Okay.
I've got a little spread. So I do laugh. I say, well, one day, if you want to know some of your mom's earlier stories, they're crafted in a book for you.
How has the Bible affected your life?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Um, you know, it's everything, honestly. I can think back to when it wasn't a resource, when it wasn't alive, and then now the difference of it's the go-to. So it's a fountain of youth, if you will. It's the thing that sustains me, it's the thing that, motivates me, and it's the thing that tells me who I really am. So people will tell you who they think you are, how they see you, what you could do better. But the Bible is the thing that puts it all into context. Because
Right.
at the end of the day, that's the roadmap for everything that I'll ever do. It's right in that book.
Right.
Yeah.
What's your favorite passage? Your favorite
Oh,
chapter?
so there's so many, but if this week, right? So let's talk about this week. Psalms. It's a couple because I was just talking at church about this, but I want to say Psalms 121. I will lift up my eyes to the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, right? I've been focusing on that for the past month, if you will, and probably because that's what my son has been, saying as his memory verse. But I love that verse because it is one that sustained me in some of the darkest days, right? And so there was a thought that just kept coming to me about, look up, right? Look up. Don't look at what's going on with you, right? Don't even look inside. Just look up. Look to the hills. And I love that verse about from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, right? So I can be calling out to a lot of people and a lot of things in life, but the Bible is very clear. My help comes from the Lord, even if it's going to come through people, but it's going to come from him first, and then he'll put them on assignment to assist me. So my first shout out has always got to be to the Lord.
Right.
So, yeah.
And do you write poems as well?
I do. Yes, I do.
And is
Yeah.
that's your other book, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that's the other book. And so my dissertation was, as I said, about senior Black women leaders, and I looked at their resilience. But what I did with that research was I started writing poems about them. So I was telling their stories, right? But then I wanted to show a different view. And so I used artwork, music, and poetry to tell their stories. And I started writing poetry when I was little, and I still have those, just your rhymey, roses are red, violets are blue type things.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I was being encouraged by people, you should really, write about your experiences. And so I decided, okay, well, I think I want to start with a poetry book and just, continue to tell those stories. And so I published that this year, and I was just so excited to be able to tell those stories and to be honest and raw, and authentic. So
You mentioned that you had some dark times.
oh yeah. Who hasn't?
Yeah. So is there any story that you can share? A
Well,
dark
sure.
story?
Well, a dark story.
There's a lot
Oh,
of dark on this podcast, but everyone shares their, you know, including myself, everyone, like you said, who hasn't.
yeah, yeah. I mean, lots of dark times. I mean, so I could tell you one of the earliest sort of dark spaces for me was I had four miscarriages.
Mm.
So that's why there's such a big gap between my first set of kids and my second, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean many, many, many dark days, and I am a fighter, some people say, oh, I'm a warrior, and I tried to press through those, right? So the first miscarriage really took me down. I mean, absolutely took me down because I already had one child and I was so excited about having another. And then, the loss, it just was devastating. And honestly, I didn't know what to do with that sadness, right? I was like, this is odd. Like, I don't feel like myself. And then I just sort of suppressed those emotions, for a long time. And then, another miscarriage and another miscarriage and another miscarriage. But what sustained me during that time really was God. It was
Mm.
looking to the hills. It was, he gave me a promise, if you will, that you will have another child. And I had to wait, and I had to wait while every circumstance looked like it wasn't going to happen. And so I remember when I was pregnant with my middle daughter, going to the doctor, and I was, laying on that table thinking, oh, here we go again, just another disappointment. And the doctor said, oh, I see the baby. And I sat up on the table and I said, you see what? What? And he looked at me so strange. And he said, you do know why you came here, right? And so, I just share that, in those dark days, God always gives us a promise.
Mm.
And if we can hang on to that and just know that it might not look the way that we think that it's going to look, and it may not come in the time that we think that it's going to come. But if He has promised you something, He will fulfill it. And so, in those darkest days, it was always Him still whispering, I'm with you. I love you. You're going to have another child. And then I had two. And I'm like, God, you're amazing. So amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes patience is a must there, right?
It is a must. It is. It is. Yeah. So,
The saying, never on schedule, but always on time.
oh,
It's
always, always on time. But, I will tell you, out of the pain of that experience really helped me to connect with other people who were hurting,
right,
because it gives you a frame of reference. And
right.
so it's more common than we think. And you think that things only happen to you, and that's not the case. A lot of people suffer in silence. And so, now, like I said, it gives me a connection point, with people who are hurting. No matter how they're hurting, I can remember, those days and those emotions and how it felt, and then say, well, if God did this for me, you know, He can certainly, do this for you, and to stretch out those arms to people who are hurting.
Yeah. You know, what's your feeling on death? That's another big topic on this podcast. Just this morning, uh, a tragedy broke out in the sports world at the time that we're recording this podcast.
Mm,
Yeah, a quarterback was hit by a car, died.
goodness.
So it's all over the news right now as we speak. And piggybacking off what you just said, that there's a lot of people suffering out there in silence, or you're not the only one. So this
Mhm,
gentleman just tragically died at 24 years old, and he's all over the news.
mm.
there's probably thousands of people that died today, and they're not all over the news, right? And so sometimes I think, we attach ourselves to our problem, but there's
Mm,
thousands, if not millions, of other people going through the same exact thing. There's somebody out there that had 4 miscarriages.
yeah.
Got to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, how do you correlate? I mean, how do you bring in the faith to to death and that type of suffering?
Yeah. So death is a piece of the journey as well, right? I mean, no one lives forever. And I think, a lot of people talk about you start with the end in mind, right? The end is death. And we have no capacity to know if we're going to live 100 years or 100 minutes. And so, the goal of this is to really to put it in the context of what do you do with the moments when you're actually still alive? I mean, that's what it's about. Um, when we're born, when we get to the age of, having like a mind that we understand that one day we will die, we can't live for that day. All we have is this moment. And so it's all about how you treat people. What do you spend your time doing? And what do you want to spend your time doing?
Hmm.
Because the Bible is clear. I mean, life, we're like a vapor, right? I mean, we just, and then this earthly life is done. And based upon what people believe, we know that, in the Christian faith, people believe that we will have an eternity, with the Lord. So long ago, I stopped kind of fearing death, right? I was like, death is the promise. I mean, so, my daddy has this thing that he likes to say to me. He says, he said, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there. And that's the ticket, right? That is the transition of life. And so every death is tragic. I mean, we can't put, the quarterback, being killed. I mean, I pray for his family and for the people who are mourning the loss of him. But you're right. There's so many people who never woke up today, right? Every death is tragic to those who love them and will miss them. And so if we start to focus on that and really just put that emphasis on, okay, have I told them that I love them today?
Yeah.
Today, like real world in this moment.
If it wasn't for death, how could we squeeze the juice out of life? Right? It's like, it's part of the deal, man.
It is. And it is
We're
really,
born to die, and then we're
we
born to create a story in between.
we are. So, years ago, I met this woman. I was doing a women's retreat or something, and I was speaking. And I don't even remember the topic, but I do remember that she came up to me at the end and she was explaining that she was still grieving the loss of her son, and he died like 3 years old. And, I'm wanting to weep with this woman because I just, I can't imagine, the pain. And she was really having a hard time, moving on. And I'm sitting there because, I don't have all the right words. None of us do. And it's not for us to be able to try to fix and solve, for people, because I'm not God. And I know that that's his role, right? He's the comforter. But I just said to her, I said, here's the only thing that I can say to you that could potentially encourage you. I said, we don't know why some people get 100 years and some people get 3 years. But my question to you is, how are you going to honor the 3 years that your son had on earth? Because she was a Christian woman. I'm a Christian woman. I said, if you believe that God is sovereign and that God is in control, then what happened in those 3 years that God gave him that you'll use moving forward? Right. And I mean, that's not me saying that, that's God saying, here's, once again, here's something I want you, to offer. And that, to her, she's like, that's exactly what I need to focus on. She said, because I want to honor his memory. Right. And so now I can leave here and think about focusing on what do I do to honor his memory. Because
Mm.
the truth is, you're never going to forget people that you love.
No.
You won't. They're imprinted into your soul, into your memory and your heart. And that's the fear of death, right? That's the fear, is that you can't connect with them in the way that you were comfortable connecting with them before.
Right. Yeah, every relationship is like a triangle, kind of. You and the other person, and at the tip, you create that bond.
Yes.
And that bond doesn't go anywhere, whether they're alive
No.
or they're dead.
No, it doesn't. I mean, as a matter of fact, that's one of the things when you were asking earlier about how to help people to move forward, right? It's to pull back on that tip of the triangle. I mean, I do that frequently. Sometimes, some of my greatest comforters are now, they're in heaven. And so I think about, okay, what would my grandmother have told me? Right. I mean, I'm frequently, thinking over the wisdom that she left for me when I was here. I think about my great aunt who passed, who in my darkest time just called me out of the blue and sung Stevie Wonder. I just called to say I love you. Right? I mean, I think on those things, and not from a selfish standpoint, from the standpoint of who am I doing those things for? Because they were modeling for me how to love others. Yeah.
There it is. That's great. Yeah. I just recently had a hospice nurse on this podcast, and I was inquiring about stories.
Mm.
She had so many amazing death stories.
Yeah.
I mean, in depth look. It was like a documentary on death, audio version. It was like
Right.
she had just these amazing stories, and some people being extremely scared, and some people just going out with just such grace, such peace,
Mm-hmm.
and some
Mm-hmm.
people being really ill, and some people being young. She's got this one patient who's like 102, and he can't understand why he's still alive. He's like, I want to die. Like, what's happening? Like, I want to,
Yes.
like, he can't walk. He's like, I want to go. Let's go. And all I can really think is that things are just happening how they're supposed to.
Yeah, I just think we leave when our work is done. I mean, that's purely what I believe we're on assignment. And sometimes we don't know what that assignment is, or who the assignment is. And for the man who's 102, who's to say that in a week there's not going to be, a new patient who comes in that he has to say a word to, or a young nurse who's starting their career who needs his perspective. I just think
Mm,
we are puzzle pieces, right?
nice. Yeah.
That's kind of the way I've always, thought about our journeys, is we are little puzzle pieces, and we connect into each other. And you don't leave until your puzzle is completed. I mean, and we know how puzzle pieces get missing, and they get under the sofa
Yeah.
and all these things. But until our last little puzzle piece is put in its place, we don't go.
I like that.
Yeah.
God's puzzle pieces.
Yes, absolutely. And see, we're connecting today, right? So you're a puzzle piece and I'm a puzzle piece. And the people who listen to this, I mean, it's all about his, the way that he connects us.
And there's always synchronicities too, because just yesterday I was talking about Stevie Wonder with someone. And so
Absolutely.
you could have mentioned any musician in the world. You could have, you could have said Yanni. You could have said Mozart, but you said Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder. Yeah. I call that confirmation, right? That sometimes I refer to that as like a kiss and a hug from heaven, right? It's like God saying, yep, you're on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah, that always happens. I have a clinic that helps people get out of pain, and I was developing a program. It's a 120-day program,
Mm-hmm.
and I was reading a marketing book to help myself, help get, clients, right? And the guy starts talking about a pain clinic, and it's on page 120.
So you're reading the right book at the right time.
I mean, these things, they just
Yeah,
happen.
they do. They do. Absolutely. Yeah.
What are art infused learning opportunities?
Oh, um, so what I use and I try to weave into every sort of presentation that I'm doing is art, music, dance, um, and poetry. So those are my art, infused sort of sessions. And the thing that I say is, like, I teach a lot of leadership principles and just different communication concepts, all types of things. And I say there's a science behind most of this. And most of you know the science. I like to bring the art, right? So lots of abstract learning, really focusing on self. How do you see yourself? So we talked about that music. So I'm always using music, asking people to find, their leadership theme song or a life song. I use music to help dissect emotions, right? So there's a song I love to use. I used it in my dissertation. It's Nina Simone, For Women.
Hmm.
And so, from the 60s, and she describes four Black women. And so I typically play that song for my participants and ask them, which one of those characters do they resonate with, right? The emotions, which one drew you in? And then we talk about that. We get these wonderful insights from people, just listening to this character. And I can remember presenting this at a conference. There are like over 100 people in the room. And when I cut the song off, I can hear this weeping. And I'm like, I'm at a conference, right? You don't typically get people weeping, in conferences, especially not a leadership conference. And this woman she's weeping. And I immediately, like, I'm about to move from the podium to go help this woman because I'm like, I've got to console her. But this other woman moves in and she says, Dr. Allen, I have her, continue. And so when she pulled herself together, she shared, with the group of people, she was like, that was my mother, that character that was in that song. That was my mother's story.
Hmm.
And I've never heard it put into words, right? I watched it, but it was her story in words. And she's like, my mother, has already passed on. And, I wish I could have really truly understood it the way that this song put it and been able to assist her. And it was just such a beautiful moment. And so that's the power of music. So I'm always trying to, implement music into training. And then dancing. So I love dancing. I've been dancing for nearly 30 years, it seems like. And so the ability to be able to move, because our bodies are wired for movement. And who wants to sit in a chair for a 6-hour learning engagement? No, people need to move. And so as much as I can incorporate that in, and then thinking about, helping them to understand, the benefits of movement. And I'm talking to myself as I'm talking to you. But being able to do that, and then poetry, being able to connect around those, poetic words and gestures and stories, and for people to be able to write their own. So, always. And then lastly, art, right? I mean, pieces of art. If I took down my wall, paper, I'm surrounded in a room that's just filled with artwork. I love art. It gives us a different way to view the world and to see ourselves and to really critically think, what was the artist thinking in that moment, right? I see it as this, but what was the artist's inspiration? And so inspiration is all around us. And so I think, I prefer to really use the artistic, flares for creativity when teaching different concepts.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no dog paintings, there's no humans are the ones that make art. That's what makes it really like unique. It's human expression.
Yeah. Except, now they are using AI to create art. And there's quite a stir because this art is really good. And so they're really starting to think about, what does this mean for humans? Now if AI, if technology can
Mm.
create masterpieces, you don't know what the inspiration is. So,
Well, AI is, the next frontier, apparently. So,
yeah,
you
it
know,
is.
the metaverse and I,
Absolutely.
we're
Time
about the
to
next
change.
10 years are going to be very interesting.
It is, but here's the thing that I think. So AI and technology, of course, it can be an enhancement, but it can also be a deterrent. And so when you start to think about that peace, right, that inner peace, we are all going to have to do that work. I mean, you're not going to be able to rely on technology truly to fix, what's happening on the inside.
Hmm.
We're still going to be, you're not going to be able to find God through AI. I mean, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's still going to be the work, that we are humans and he is the creator of humans, and we're going to have to continually seek him. And I don't care how good our technology becomes, we're still going to have to seek him for that inner peace.
Right.
So, yeah.
So before I get to my last question, where can someone come find you, see your work, come say hello?
Oh, yeah. So I am a social media dinosaur, meaning I am just now starting to connect, to that. So they could find me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn is Antoinette Tony, which is my family name, Toni Allen. So Antoinette Tony Allen. They could find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on Facebook, Dr. Antoinette Allen. That's another place that they could connect with me. And then I have a very small YouTube channel, and that's once again Dr. Antoinette Allen. You should be able to find me there.
So we don't have to send you snail mail.
No. But my oldest daughter is working now to get me, connected. She's like, Mom, you're really starting to connect with people. You've got to get on social media. But
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So what are the top 3 books that inspired you besides the Bible?
Oh, so there is a book, it's on my shelf here, by Desmond Tutu and his daughter. It's called The Book of Forgiving.
Mm.
And so that's probably a number one, because forgiveness is really, that's my forever work, right? So that's the beautiful thing that came out of my dissertation, and that's the work that I do, is I help people to really think about forgiveness. So that book was just critical for me, understanding the different levels of forgiveness. Another book is Maya Angelou's, her book of poems.
Mm.
So that's another one. I'm a huge, Maya Angelou fan. She's such an inspirational force. And
Mm.
then there is this other book that I really love, and it's called Managing Transitions by William Bridges.
Mm.
And so I probably teach with this book quite a bit, because he talks about the emotional side of change, and
Mm.
that most change efforts fail because we don't acknowledge the human emotions that go into change. And so that's so critical for me, because I love helping people to think through emotions, because we spent a lot of time suppressing them. At least that's my story, is not understanding how important emotions are for us as we walk in the world. So
Yes, yes. We can't repress and suppress. We gotta, you know, we gotta
we
let
have
it
to let them
out.
out. We do. And that is a gateway to peace. I mean, it's being able to, mature in your emotions and be able to effectively, be able to respond to them in the world.
That's why
So
I think crying is just so important.
it is.
Crying and
I,
laughing.
yeah, I never used to cry. Like I really was almost stoic, in that way. And now these days, like my kids, they're like, Mom, you're crying again over the commercial. And I'm like, it's just so beautiful.
Right on. Very cool. Well, I
Yeah,
appreciate your time today.
absolutely.
And
And so,
I think I'm going to name this episode God's Puzzle Pieces.
yes. And so I just want to say thank you for the invite. Today is my birthday. And
Ah,
so this is my birthday present from God. That's every year God sends me something. And so when I got your invite, I told my daughter, I said, I think this is my birthday present from God because this is my first podcast interview. So I was just, I said, this is so exciting to be able to talk about him, on this day. He makes everything possible. So that is definitely a puzzle piece.
very cool. And congratulations on another year.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese. If this episode opened your heart, feel free to share on social media and tell your loved ones. Also, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may peace be with you.